Hey guys, I'm here to do videos for the Light and the Thunder Zone of the 7th Zone event today. This video is going to be covering the Light Zone specifically, but if you're interested in checking out the other elements or the AoE versions of the event, I will leave the link to the videos or the playlists in the description below. So for the Light Zone, you want to use your Dark Zone attackers, as that is who the enemy is weak to. And this week they are single target enemies, which means that there's only one enemy that you have to worry about instead of the four enemies we had previously, which means that this time it's important to use your single target attacks. For the attackers I'm going to be using in this video, it's going to be the new Autoril just at level 60. He does decent damage just at level 60. And then most importantly the Goblin Slayer, which I have at MLB, which is going to be dealing the most damage and pretty much taking care of the boss on his own to some extent. You can also use any other dark attacker that you have high level that has a single target attack that hits for at least just a decent number. And then with enough support and with enough defenses, you should be able to clear it. I've had no problems with clearing any of the single target zones yet. And I always cleared them before turn 15, so even if your units are lower level, you should be able to clear them by turn 20, which is the limit. They do hit harder, which means that you do have to have more defenses, and for that I'm using the Strengthened Magic debuff that Haruhime does. I'm using the Galmus as the sacrificial unit. Alicia is also an alternative if you want more defenses. And then I'm using the Haruhime's skill 1 as well to reduce the damages. And the other sacrificial unit to Galmus is the Line. If you don't know how sacrificial units work, you have to put a revolving amulet on them to make them swap out at the end of the turn. And then another important thing that you want to have in this stage is either glorious anklets with stun resistance or the 3-star MLB Misha, which also provides 100% stun resistance for your team. So you want either a combination of those two or one or the other, because the enemy does apply stun. I think I've covered everything here, so let's go ahead and go into the battle. First turn I'm just gonna use Line's sacrificial buff for increasing the assay gouge, which means that we will get our assays faster, and then we're gonna apply buffs and debuffs on all the other units. Okay. So from here on out, I'm making sure to just apply every buff, and then when Haruhime comes in, I'm gonna extend it. Another thing that is important to have in these modes, the single target zones, is having a strength and magic debuff, removal unit if you are having trouble with survivability. And for that I'm using the Haruhime this time, but there's plenty of other alternatives. Just something that removes either the strength or magic buff or both ideally. The bell is an option, and then you have a lot of things, and as long as you have two decently leveled dark attackers, you should be fine with damage, with the damage part. Since these guys are more squishy, they're easier to kill, but they do deal more damage than the four enemies we had in AoE 7 zones. For the special attacks, through my testing I decided to do, because it seemed to work better, I decided to do just Goblin Slayer special attacks, due to him being the biggest part of my team's damage. but if the damage between the units is split more for you, then it might be worth to use Haruhime special earlier on, and then using multiple special attacks in combination later on when you gather them up. But for this run I'm just going to be using Goblin Slayer special attack pretty much every time that I get it. And then the boss applies strength and magic debuffs on turns 4, 7, and 10, I believe. You can always check those by clicking and holding on your unit and then checking if your unit is debuffed. So Haruhime is gonna always remove those from my units when it happens. But if you don't have Haruhime, you can just also wait it out, debuffs, and then use your special attacks when you are not debuffed. That's also very much okay. I use that whenever I don't use Haruhime in the team comp, which is also pretty often. But what I'm trying to say here is that there's a lot of options that you're able to use, and you should still be able to clear it. And the important thing is obviously just to clear the stage this time, because you do want to get those important materials for crafting, weapon and armor ascension. So there goes another Goblin Slayer special attack, and then the last special attack should come at turn 10. There is 2 other multipliers than just, if you're worried about score, there's also 2 other multipliers by the score takes into account. One of them being just the hardest hitting attack you did, and then the other being taking as little damage as possible. But if you're not going for score, if you're just going for clearing, since the rewards for score aren't really that high, you should be perfectly fine just with clearing it, to be honest. Okay. Make sure to extend our debuffs and buffs once again. You never want to lose your debuffs and buffs. That's pretty much the worst thing that can happen to you, because having to reapply them is it takes like 1 or 2 turns just to get everything back together, and you won't really have, even if you get all your other buffs and debuffs back, you will still be missing the buffs and debuffs that you receive from your sacrificial units. So definitely make sure to hopefully you have Haruhime that is able to extend the buffs and debuffs, but if you don't, you should also probably be able to find some alternative, maybe with fire bros or something like that, but I'm not sure how well they would work when there's a fire resistance. Okay. So it should take 2 more turns here for me to clear it, unless I get lucky on this turn with the counters. Usually it does take 12 turns for me. But again, even if you don't clear it in as little turns, you should still be fine. Just as long as you clear it within those 20 turns and get the materials that you wanted from the very hard stage, as well as obviously the lower difficulties, you should be fine. And if you're not able to do very hard difficulty, definitely make sure to do normal and hard at least, because you really do want to get those weapon ascension materials. Thank you for watching the video. If you want to check out the Thunder Zone as well, featuring Earth attackers, the video will be uploaded in like 3 or 4 hours, I think. And I will see you guys then. Bye bye!